For centuries, the Mongol Empire has fascinated the world, not only for its unmatched conquests, but for its complexity and cultural richness. Today on Timeless Mongolia, we are turning the spotlight on the remarkable women of Mongol Empire, particularly those who carried out power in the heart of Mongol Iran. These women were not only queens and regents, but influential administrators, cultural intermediaries, and religious patrons. To guide us through this fascinating journey, we are honored to be welcomed back with Dr. Bruno De Nicola, historian and author of A Woman in Mongol Iran, The Hatuns. Dr. Bruno, welcome back once again on Timeless Mongolia.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you back, but this time in person in Mongolia.
Yes, it's a big pleasure for me also to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So to start our interview, could you tell our viewers what initially sparked your interest to explore the lives of Mongol women?
Well, this is when I was still an undergraduate studying in Spain. I was part of a group of young researchers who were looking at the history of women in medieval Europe. And then I got fascinated by the Mongol Empire, and when I read more about the Mongol Empire, I started looking at how present these women were in the histories. And so that got my attention, and I thought that would be interesting to go further into this and look at the role of these women in different aspects of society.
Was there any particular discovery that reshaped or challenged your previous understanding of their legacy?
I don't know if there is a particular event, but I remember that impressed me a lot the role of Sorghantani Beki, the wife of Tului, the son of Genghis Khan, because she was very active all over the place, and she was the mother of Kublai Khan. And so the few books I read at the time of the Mongols, she appeared in different books on the Mongol Empire, especially in China, and that attracted my attention to the role of women as mothers, as wives, and as political leaders.
Fascinating. Your research underscores that Mongol elite women exercise a considerable authority. For that, how did these domains interact to reinforce their influence? And at the same time, what does this multidimensional power reveal about the broader structure of Mongol imperial society?
Well, women were influential not only in Iran, in the Mongol Empire, but across the Mongol Empire. And also interesting is that women appear to be very influential and present in the political life of the empire even before the empire. So we have, for example, the cases of Hulion, the mother of Genghis Khan, or his wife Borte, for example, that the secret history of the Mongols already tell us how prominent they were in the early stages, or even before the establishment of the empire. And as the empire began to grow, we see the influence of these women appearing across all different aspects of society, in politics, in the economy, and also in the religious aspects of life. And all these three things are integrated to one another. And we see the influence of these women appearing in, Mongol women appearing in all the territories that the Mongols conquered, being that the Russia, what is today Russia, the Golden Horde, what is today Iran in the Ilkhanate, Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate, or even in Yuan China.
Mm-hmm. And what about this multidimensional power? What does it reveal about the broader Mongolian imperial society?
Well, I think what it might reveal is that the Mongol Empire was a nomadic empire. There seems to be a connection between the role that women occupy in the Mongol Empire and some traditional, in inverted commas, nomadic societies where women seems to be more prominent in the public sphere. And therefore, this pre-imperial and nomadic custom of having women more present in the public life was transported into the empire. So that, I think, where this might have come from. It's a theory. People might debate this, but that's what I think.
Mm-hmm. That connects very well with what we're exploring next. At that time, during the Mongol Iran time, Mongol women transitioned from a nomadic shamanistic society to a predominantly sedentary Islamic world. So for this, how did the Hatuns maintain and transform their authority within the Islamic administrative and the cultural framework of Ilkhanate?
Well, I have to say that especially during the first part of the first decades of the empire, the women doesn't seem to have transformed their way of life that much. Firstly, women in the Mongol Empire were of different religious confessions. We have women being Buddhist, women being Christian, especially of the Nestorian sect, and also some of them being Muslims later on. So there is a multi-faith environment within these women. So not all of them were shamanists, and women were shamanists, but they're also women of other religion. And as the empire grew and women moved into different religious setups and cultural contexts, they began to adapt. And we start seeing that in the next generations. As the new generation of Mongol in general, but women in particular, began to be raised in different political and religious environment, we start seeing an adaptation towards that. Now, having said that, I will not say that they totally sedentarized. We know that they continue to have their camps, they continue to have summer pastures and winter pastures, so they continue their nomadic life. But there was a certain degree of adaptation to the new life of the Mongols, for example, in Iran or in China, where they have to coexist with a more nomadic way of life. So it was transformed to a certain degree. We don't see that until the 14th century, when some of these women seem to behave, especially in Iran, a bit more like Persian princesses, but they still remaining very Mongolian in essence. So they might have less, they might be Muslim now, and they might be also less nomadic, if you want, but they still remain very influential during the 14th century. So they kept this nomadic temperament of these women even into the 14th century.
That's very interesting. That means that through the queens,
yes,
the regents and the mothers, the Mongolian nationals in Mongol Iran transformed with that adaptation, holding the essence at the same time adapting.
Yes, I mean, this is a process that I think happens everywhere, right? So especially when the population moves, it tends to adapt. It's also, you have to consider that the Mongols were a minority in the territories they conquered. So at the beginning they kept many of their Mongol or nomadic or steppe traditions, if you want. But as time went by, they had to adapt. And in certain parts they adapted, others they didn't negotiate and remained very nomadic in essence. Also, this transformation was different depending in which areas. So in Russia, or what is today Russia, this was a bit different, and in Central Asia as well, that in places where sedentary society had a more strong, was stronger, like in Iran or in China for that matter. But it's a complex dynamic to analyze. So I think I only did the tip of the iceberg, but there is a lot of research to be done on that still.
From your past research, was there any predominant feature or characteristics of a Mongol woman?
Well, the one that in my research, when I did my research for the book, that was part of my PhD, the thing that surprised me the most to find out was the economic influence that women had, so the role in the economy of women. And what I think I tried to show there is that, I mean, we knew from the narratives that women were important in politics. We see them when we have accounts of how these women were participating in politics. But I think what it was interesting for me is understand how they did that. And my suggestion is that one of the reasons why they were able to accomplish this political power was because they were very influential and very integrated into the economy of the empire. So these women were, they not only receive wealth, or they have wealth, they manage it, they invested this wealth that they had, and with that they accumulated power. And accumulating that power, they were able to influence politically as well. So they had an influence because there were women in this nomadic society and they was highly considered, but also in practical terms, they had this economic background that allowed them to influence in politics. So that was, I think, in my research that humbly I was able to contribute to the bigger debate, if you want, the economic side of it.
It's really remarkable how they were navigated through these complex systems of religion, economy, and then politics.
Yes, and I think this is something that women go through in all periods of time and everywhere. The difference, I think, with the Mongol Empire is that we have information about them, especially about noble women. We don't know much about lower class of the society. But of noble women, we have this information. And in this case, they were very open. And so because they were in the spotlight, the male historians that record this, it is important, they were male, what we have of women were written by men. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Exactly, the perspective is still male, but about women. But in this context, having so many women appear in the spotlight is telling us something about the role of these women in the Mongol Empire was different from what we find in sedentary society and so on, even though women were important in any society at any time. That's a fact.
Great. So now let's shift towards your current work. Persian and Arabic manuscripts, which reveal a complex narrative of cross-cultural exchange. So how do these textual sources reveal about the deeper processes of transculturation in medieval Iran and Central Asia?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I mean, my current project in the last few years is called NoMansLand. It's just a short name for Noma's Manuscripts Landscape. And where we set up with a team of people from the Austrian Academy of Sciences, thanks to the support of the Austria Science Fund, we managed to set up a team, and we went to Iran and different countries in Central Asia and in Europe to collect material about manuscripts that we know were produced or were copied at the Mongol period in the regions that dominated by the Mongols. And normally we have been written the history of the Mongol Empire using these narrative sources, the ones I use for writing about women. But we have about a dozen of them, of these narrative sources. So when we look at the manuscripts that survive from the period, we have been written the history of the Mongols with a dozen, maybe 20 sources. Now, what we found in the libraries today, that from the Mongol period, we have over 9,000 works that have survived from this period. And that revealed also that the genres of these texts that were produced under the Mongols were very varied. And yet, we don't know anything about them, or they are not studied in connection with the Mongols. So the project set up to try to locate all these manuscripts, understand how they were produced, how they circulated, because these books moved, and how they were consumed or read by people. And so that's what we are trying to do, and trying to reshape the literary and intellectual history of the Mongol Empire by looking at the surviving manuscript from that period.
It's incredible, because the Mongol Empire itself is very vast, and I cannot imagine how many manuscripts could come from different locations.
Correct. Yes, I mean, it's quite impressive. We were also surprised. We didn't expect to find so many. But I think that speaks of the complexity of the period, of the cultural richness of the period of the Mongol domination of the Islamic world, and something that has not been evaluated together. So Mongolis, we tend to look at, when we find something in the Mongol Empire, we say these were the Mongols. And people doing Islamic studies, when they find something during the Mongol period, they will say this is Islamic medicine or Islamic art or something. And only few people, or not many people, is connecting both, and that's what we're trying to do. So we found, for example, over 400 copies of hadiths, for example. Or 350 works on Islamic medicine. And these were copied under the Mongols, and yet we don't have a single article on medicine or Islamic medicine under the Mongols. This was nothing to do with the fact that the Mongols were in this region. So that's what we are trying to rewrite and re-understand.
All the best for
Thank you, we need the luck.
So lastly, Austrian Academy of Science is entering into a new agreement with the Genghis Khan Museum. Could you share more about what projects or research work is envisioned, and what's the goal of this partnership?
Yes, we are very, very excited about this. We have this new Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with the Genghis Khan Museum and the Institute of Iranian Studies of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, where I work. And we have set up a new framework to expand collaborations between the museum and our research institute. It have different layers. Some will be like exchange of scholars, so scholars from our institute can come and study here the material and use in the library, etc., and also promote the coming of researchers from Mongolia to Austria to benefit from the researchers there. But also we have a few specific initiatives. We have some research projects that are being thought and considered right now, but also we are planning the documentary to be done about the Mongols in Austria, that the museum will kindly help us with some of the materials they have here. And also we are planning a conference in 2027 in Austria, also to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Genghis Khan's death. And therefore, that will also be something that we will collaborate to bring scholars from Mongolia to this conference in Austria in 2027. So this is just part of it, but we use this as a framework to enhance collaborations between the two institutions.
Once again, all the best for the great milestones in the future.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Bruno, for your profound insights. Your work not only helped us to deepen our understanding about Mongol women in Mongol Iran, but also challenged us to shift our perspective and see Mongol from a new perspective, not just as a tale of a conquest, but a story of this cross-cultural dynamics and also dynamic female leadership in Mongol Empire.
Thank you very much for having me, and it was a pleasure to be with you today.
To our viewers, thank you for joining Timeless Mongolia. Stay with us as we continue to explore the legacy of the Mongol Empire and the voices who shaped it. Until next time.